And so if I'm looking to raise funds to, let's say, to build a new factory for my company, I issue a bunch of these bonds and sell them in the market. And part of the perk for you buying my bond is that you're going to get a rate of return. You're going to get the coupon, let's say 2 to 5% of the amount that you buy.
Right.
And that's compensation to you effectively for giving me the money that I need to build my new factory today. Mm-hmm. And then over time, hopefully the factory will become productive and will throw off income, and you'll get repaid. And then at the end of the term of the bond, let's say 10 years, you get the face value back, plus the value of all the interest you've earned in the meantime, which is great. And so your question, why do we pay interest on our government debt? It's because it depends on two things. Firstly, the fact that it's inherent in the way that the instrument is constructed. So you will issue a bond with a face value of X and a coupon of Y. And the coupon, or at least the rate of interest that people will require a particular bond to carry, will vary depending on how much credit someone puts in your government, which is why, again, during the Liz Truss mini budget, we saw yields spiking. And that was because people were demanding a higher rate of interest in order to hold our government debt, because their risk profile had changed. At least their assessment of the risk the UK posed had changed. And so as to the question, why do we pay interest on our own debt? It's because it's often not held by people that we control. So if you're selling a bond into the financial markets, that could be bought by anyone who has access to those markets. It could be bought by citizens in the US and France, in Japan, and those investors will want a yield on their bonds. Why do we pay interest to the Bank of England when the Bank of England buys our bonds? I think that's a very good question, and
that's essentially like so I understand I understand to an extent there's a need for us to have perhaps more than one person buying our bonds than just the Bank of England, right?
That is ideal. You don't want to end up in a Bank of Japan scenario, where the biggest holder of Japanese debt is the Bank of Japan.
Yeah, which is perhaps not ideal, but it raises the question again for me, is like, why would that be a massive problem? Is it simply because of international sort of trust in your currency?
I'd say it's because those bonds are essentially fungible. So the bonds the Bank of England holds, it does actually sell those as well in the market. So you could theoretically create sets of bonds that didn't carry any coupon. Okay. I mean, there's no legal reason why you couldn't do that. But I think in terms of bluntly financial credibility, and those bonds would no longer be fungible with other bonds. So you'd only be able to sell a non-interest bearing 10-year to the Bank of England, say, and then the Bank of England would be stuck with that. It would never be able to divest it. And actually, the Bank of England has been doing QT, quantitative tightening, for a long time. In fact, I jotted down, this is a horrible number. The Bank of England's QT program is thought to have lost us between 45 and 200 billion pounds since it was started.
Why? Why has it lost us money?
I think it's because of the delta between the price that they're able to get for the bonds in the market now and the price at which they were acquired.
Okay. Why can't we just skip the bonds altogether? Like, I know this might seem like a really economically illiterate question, but as long as we're not going wild with the spending, like, what is there to stop us saying, okay, well, passing an act of parliament and going, okay, the Bank of England will now just create money with no bonds attached to it whenever we decide there's an infrastructure project we would like to make?
Well, I mean, the Bank of England does actually create money already other than through bonds. It can simply credit the government's, I forget what the name of the account is. It's I think it's the consolidated account.
Yeah, I've heard about this. So why can't we just do that?
I mean, you can and we do. It's simply that we raise money from a number of different places, and the international bond markets is one of them.
Okay.
And an example from recent history is Greece. So obviously, you'll remember Greece suffered very badly during the financial crisis, and if you go back through newspaper reports at the time, there was a lot of kerfuffle around Greece no longer being able to access the global bond markets. Obviously, those are euro-denominated bonds issued by the Greek central bank. And,
Clearly, this doesn't like what happened to Greece.
no, well, I mean, I don't think many of the Greek people did either.
No.
And that problem would have been exacerbated had Greece not been part of the euro, because in the financial crisis, certain of the Portugal, Greece, Italy, Spain were bailed out to an extent by the Frances and the Germanys in the eurozone. But not being Argentina is another example. After Argentina's, I think 2 or 3 defaults now, it's very difficult for countries to raise money internationally. And I think your questions actually get into a rather interesting point, which is that there's a key distinction that many people miss, which is there's an enormous difference between money and value. So money is obviously one of its functions is as a tool to measure value. And as we've already explored, governments can create money in all kinds of different ways, and they do, but they don't necessarily create value. And that's a really, really important point that I think a lot of modern economics doesn't focus on. And that kind of takes us back to the energy point that I mentioned earlier. Governments don't create energy. They can access energy sources. They can exploit it. They can take the profits from that exploitation and invest them. But money is a tool for measuring those things. It's not value in and of itself.
News, everyone. My book about GameStop, the craziest story ever told, is now finished. Well, almost. Still waiting for the final draft. So, in the meantime, I think you should look at pre-ordering it or any one of the multiple fantastic, beautiful t-shirts that I have designed in order to sell with the book. Thank you, everyone, for your patience over the last few years while I have been finishing it very slowly. And I am really, really excited for people to read it. Link is in the description below. Enjoy the podcast.